proposing in your budget.
Well, that's why your 90% number is misleading, because you're not factoring in what is going to be added to the amount that is proposed in congressionally directed
So
spending.
you're just saying, Congress, if you want this, you got to, each individual senator has to.
The president's not asking for your earmarks.
Okay,
Senator.
no, but I'm just saying.
I don't know how much you want to raid the SRF.
Mr. Administrator, let me
that's something for you
just
to
finish.
fight for.
What I need you to understand is the clean water revolving funds, state revolving funds, are absolutely critical to our states. And you say there's money hanging out there. I heard your answer on that. The fact is that it actually takes communities and states a lot to design and engineer and put this all together, and they have to have the money first and in order to do that. And what we do know is because there's a lot of positions that have been eliminated at EPA. It's taking a lot longer for those funds to get out there.
That's not accurate.
So yes, it is. And so
Absolutely untrue.
I need to make this point because I want to agree with the chair that this is a fund that is critical for our. Washington State has been a real leader in responding to contamination from PFAS. These are forever chemicals, and they've been linked to cancer, liver, thyroid problems, fertility issues. They're very widespread. They're very hard to replace, but that has not stopped my state from really working hard to tackle this problem head on. Washington State actually led the way in banning PFAS in food packaging and in firefighting foam. And in 2024, EPA actually followed Washington State's lead and set federal drinking water standards for 6 of PFAS chemicals for the first time ever. Last year, you proposed rescinding standards for 4 of these chemicals, citing cost and flexibility. Administrator Zeldin, what analysis has EPA conducted on the health cost of rescinding these PFAS drinking water standards, and specifically, what impacts can we expect to see in developmental delays, decreased birth weights, or early puberty for children?
Well, Senator, the extension of PFOA and PFOS for 2 years, that was primarily based on costs. With regards to the rescission of the 4 other types of PFAS, that was following litigation because the process under the Safe Drinking Water Act that was followed.
Actually, that wasn't the question I was asking you. I was asking you what analysis you've done on the health costs, not on the health costs, the impact, especially to our kids.
Okay, I thought you were asking me about the rescission of the 4.
I'm asking you what the health cost is of that rescission.
Well, so
have you done an analysis?
That was a legal.
Have you looked at it?
Well, we have absolutely. We have extensive work going on across the agency on all sorts of aspects regarding PFAS, and it's a really long list of work that the agency is involved with.
The reason I ask is because EPA's own research found that PFAS standards that you gutted could have saved $1.5 billion in avoided.
Again, it was a
health
legal
costs,
requirement, Senator.
in avoided health costs, and we just can't allow the cost for compliance.
We have to follow the law.
Well, I'm just telling you what the health cost of this is. That's
I agree that
question
there's
is.
a health cost.
And I believe that it is really important that we make sure we are doing the right thing, that we are protecting children's health, not doing what corporations need, because there is not yet any proven treatment. You know that for PFAS. The only solution is keeping it out of water in the first place, and that is the point I'm making, is the health impacts. Let me go to another question. Mr. Administrator, the anti-abortion activists are pushing this really absurd argument that women who use birth control or self-managed abortions or miscarriages at home somehow pose a risk to our public health and to the environment. I am deeply concerned that this radical conspiracy has found an audience at the EPA. Last October, the New York Times reported that senior EPA officials directed scientists to look into how the federal government could track traces of abortion medication in wastewater. And last year, House Republicans actually included a provision of that in their EPA funding bill. Are you actually spending taxpayer dollars looking into medication abortion being in the water?
Unless they're one of the many hundreds of pharmaceuticals on the list of the contaminant candidate list, I'm not aware of the agency doing anything with that.
Do you seriously believe there's abortion in the water like some of the far-right activists are suggesting?
I have not. You just said abortion in the water?
That's what some far-right activists are saying, that they have an audience in the EPA on that absurd issue.
Yeah, I have not had a conversation with anyone at the agency as far as abortions in water.
And you're not actively pursuing it or don't have groups of...
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, I'm referring to a New York Times article that reported that senior officials have directed scientists in the EPA to look at this.
Okay, well, again, unless you're referring to a pharmaceutical that is on the list of the hundreds of pharmaceuticals that are part of the contaminant candidate list 6. But aside from that, I'm not aware of anything else at the agency other than that.
I'm citing a New York Times article, and we're happy to get it to you, but I just got to say, this is really crazy. This isn't environmental protection. I hope that there is nothing going on in your agency. This is not science, it's not healthcare, and it's not the job of the EPA. Just wanted to make that clear. I also want to associate the comments of the chair of this committee and Senator Baldwin on the state revolving funds. Cutting them by 90% to me is just absurd. Have you actually talked to water utilities about what sort of price increase that your proposal would cost them and their utility customers?
Senator, well, we're in touch with thousands of water utilities all the time, all across the entire country about this. But as I pointed out earlier, what we don't propose, I'm not opining on the merits of congressionally directed spending, and I'm not opining on congressional set-asides, but the account has been getting depleted on grants, not loans, so it hasn't been revolving. We, in our budget, do not propose congressionally directed spending. That's something that Congress is going to decide.
Which I know you took well part in.
But
that
was the primary difference between what the president had proposed in FY26 and the final appropriation. The delta is primarily made up of congressionally directed spending. The president's not going to propose it. I'm not going to sit here and advocate for it, but what I will advocate for is that when Congress does decide to do congressionally directed spending, then my job is to help make sure that that money gets out as effectively as possible.
That is different than the 90% cut that you are proposing in your budget.
Well, that's why your 90% number is misleading, because you're not factoring in what is going to be added to the amount that is proposed in congressionally directed spending.
So you're just saying, Congress, if you want this, you got to, each individual senator has
to... The president's not asking for your earmarks,
okay,
Senator.
No, but I'm just saying...
I don't know how much you want to raid the SRF.
Mr. Administrator,
that's something for you to fight for.
What I need you to understand is the clean water revolving funds, state revolving funds, are absolutely critical to our states. And you say there's money hanging out there. I heard your answer on that. The fact is that it actually takes communities and states a lot to design and engineer and put this all together, and they have to have the money first and in order to do that. And what we do know is because there's a lot of positions that have been eliminated at EPA, it's taking a lot longer for those funds to get out there.
That's not accurate.
So yes, it is. And so
Absolutely untrue.
I need to make this point because I agree with the chair that this is a fund that is critical for our states, and our families just simply cannot afford to make up these funds. This is something I feel really strongly about. And by the way, our CDS projects are still water projects. We don't raid the water funding to do that. So that is my
loans are being turned into grants.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
They're called forever chemicals for a reason. Once PFAS contamination enters your water supply, there is no treatment, no cure, no way to undo the damage. The only solution is keeping them out in the first place. And in a fiery Senate hearing, one senator made clear that the EPA is moving in exactly the wrong direction. Senator Patty Murray came to this hearing armed with facts, frustration, and very little patience for bureaucratic deflection. Her target, EPA Administrator Zeldin, who has been overseeing the rollback of landmark drinking water standards that the agency itself worked years to establish. Here's the background. In 2024, the EPA, following the lead of states like Washington, set federal drinking water standards for PFAS chemicals for the very first time in American history. PFAS, or PUR, and polyfluoroalkyl substances are linked to cancer, developmental delays in children, decreased birth rates, and early puberty. They are extraordinarily widespread and nearly impossible to remove once present. Then the current EPA proposed rescinding standards for 4 of those chemicals, citing cost and flexibility. Senator Murray wanted to know one thing. What health analysis did the EPA conduct before making that decision? What will it cost Americans in real health outcomes, in sick children, developmental damage, cancer diagnoses, to roll back these protections? Administrator Zeldin's answers were evasive at best. He deflected to legal processes, litigation, and cost frameworks. Murray cut him off repeatedly. That wasn't what she asked. She wasn't asking about legal technicalities. She was asking about children's health. And then she delivered the number that should have ended the debate. The EPA's own research found that the standards being gutted could have saved $1.5 billion in avoided health costs. The administrator acknowledged there is a health cost to the rescission, and yet the rollback is moving forward anyway. Murray's point was stark and simple. There is no proven treatment for PFAS contamination. Prevention is the only tool available. Weakening the standards doesn't save money. It just shifts the cost on sick Americans. But the hearing didn't stop there. Murray pivoted to a separate and frankly bewildering issue. Reports that senior EPA officials had directed agency scientists to investigate traces of abortion medication in wastewater. The New York Times had reported on this directly. Anti-abortion activists have been pushing the argument that women using birth control or experiencing miscarriages at home somehow pose an environmental risk, a claim with no scientific basis whatsoever. Zeldin claimed no knowledge of any such directive. Murray pressed him directly. Do you believe there is abortion medication contaminating water supplies, as far-right activists have claimed? The administrator appeared genuinely confused by the question, which Murray found both revealing and alarming. Either the EPA's own administrator doesn't know what's happening inside his agency, or he does and won't say. Murray was unambiguous. Tracking abortion medication in water is not science. It is not the EPA's job, and it has no place in a federal agency funded by taxpayer dollars. The final flashpoint was over Clean Water State revolving funds, critical financing that helps communities across the country build and maintain water infrastructure. The administration has proposed cutting these funds by 90%. Zeldin disputed the framing, arguing congressional earmarks inflate the comparison. Murray wasn't buying it. States and communities need funding first to design, engineer, and build water projects. Gutting the revolving fund doesn't just slow things down, it stops them entirely. And with EPA staffing already slashed, the money that does exist is taking longer than ever to reach the communities that need it. Clean water isn't a political issue, but the people making decisions about it apparently need reminding of that.